It's nice
Some
to
people,
understand what's going on.
some people want to go back to Latin. I mean, you're
I
not
do.
gonna, you're not going to, again, y- people are
The
not
thing
gonna view
is,
you. They can't,
the,
they can't follow you. They can't,
the thing is though, Chris, if you've gone, I don't know if you have, there is something very mysterious about it. So it does elevate you to some other world because they're literally speaking another language. It does take on a more mystical experience. They're just like, I'm someplace else. I'm being transported to another place. And if you think about the Greeks still do their mass in Greek. The Jews, they do their masses in Hebrew. But they've modernized it, right? So the old religions, Islam, all Muslim people, no matter what country you're in, you have to learn to say it in Arabic, right? Allah Akbar is Allah
yeah, but that,
Akbar in Nigeria, and it's Allah Akbar in Singapore, right?
yeah,
Because the language actually does make it
yeah, but
mystical.
that's their language. I mean, if you go to just anybody in the Middle East, all of them speak Arabic, all of them.
No, no, but not, but, oh, but
Aside from speaking Qatari, or
no, no, no.
it's their
But
language.
but the Chris Persians in Iran do not speak Arabic. They speak Farsi, but
No, no, I know
they
that
say it
their
in
main
Arabic.
language, is not it. But I know people from actually somebody from Iran who is a Persian. He speaks
Yeah,
Arabic because they're taught that from the beginning. We weren't taught to
right.
speak Latin,
But
so
we were. But that's the thing, Chris. We used to all be taught Latin.
well, I don't know about that in the United States or
Right, right.
England.
But this is
Eh,
like this is like anti-Catholic country.
well, yeah, but not the rest of the world, not the rest of not the rest of Europe or South
But no, no,
America.
no. But Chris, that's the thing. If you went to Catholic school up until Vatican II, up until 1965, you learned
Hmm.
Latin in school so that
Yep.
you could hear the mass and understand it. So we did do that. And so that's I'm sort of taking the traditionalists' point of view of just like these monofaiths that are powerful throughout history. Judaism, it's still in Hebrew. Islam is in Arabic. Roman Catholicism was in Latin and now it's in the language. That's the point. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That there is a lineage and traditionalist that does keep the language because it keeps the mystery of it. Yes, it's hard to understand. That's the point. You're not supposed to know. That's the language of
Well,
Jesus.
yeah, but if you're trying to grow Christianity, you're not going to. Uh,
I understand. That's the argument that Protestants had.
no, 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 no. But that's not the same thing. No,
No,
it's
no,
not
no,
the same
no.
thing.
In the 16th century, that was the point. Like the guy who translated the Bible from Latin into English the first time was a heretic and was brought to the bishop. It's like, what the hell are you doing? Why are you saying this stuff in English? You're not supposed to do that. So
Yeah.
it is like writing the Bible in your natural language was a heretical thing. So it's all
Yeah.
very interesting.
Well, it is interesting. It is I guess you could say a radical or traditional, however you want to look at it, point of view. And but that's what is Pope Leo going to do? Because we don't know much. I mean, right now he's obviously making people
Well,
trying to get them to stop war. Now, do we
I
need
think
to
I,
go
I
back?
think I think he'll be somewhere in between. I think that as he's someone who is elevated by Francis and understanding the modern world, especially being in South America, there's a little, you'll know better than me. Latinos are conservative by nature, right? It's
Yeah.
just, it's within the faith, within it, there is a heartbeat of the festivals of the town, of venerating saints, of prayer, of things that are more traditional. So he'll carry that, and then I think as he's someone who is elevated by Francis himself, he is beholden to that legacy. But then we can already see in the name he chose of Leo, who was a pro labor kind of
Yeah.
modernity, but he was both conservative and at the same time. And we can see it in that Leo is staying back in the Vatican, wearing the full garb, not going in the white, not wearing the beat up shoes that Francis wear, that he's somewhere in between, right? Because he's not a Franciscan. He's not a Franciscan. He's an Augustinian, which is an older
Yeah.
order that is much more traditional. So I think he'll be somewhere in between, sort of tack us back away from some of radical side of Francis and more in the middle of what you'd expect. I think he's more measured, more intellectual, more kind of like an operator versus a radical.
Well, why he chose Leo was obviously for Leo the 13th,
13th.
and he was a revolutionary when it came to modernization. And I think that's what I've quoted him from talking about AI and how he
Mm,
can say we need to utilize that and whatnot. Now, some priests from around the world have saying, "What does the church got to do with AI?" Well, but if that's what Pope Leo's doing, I like it because you got to stick with the times. You can't kind of what the sisters were doing. You were beatboxing, so you got to stick with the time. You can't let it. You can't. It's same thing with businesses. People before used to not hire a social media manager. Now you kind of have to. So
hmm
you got to stick with the time. Although you got to maintain. Clearly, to me, it's
Balance.
pretty. It's pretty
It's
simple. I mean,
balance.
the word, the scripture, you cannot change. You know what I mean? So that stuff should never be even thought of being changed.
Mm.
But obviously, different ways of approaching people. I think that
Well,
should
it's
be
also it's also about emphasis. Like, what do you want to emphasize? Do you want to emphasize a fire and brimstone kind of like orthodoxy where everything outside of the line is terrible? Or do you want to be like Francis was? It was just like, you know what? These things that are outside of the Catholic Church's teachings, I'm not choosing to emphasize that. I want to talk about the poor and I want to talk about the dignity of poverty and I want to lift those people up. You're gay, you want to get married to five people. Yes, we condemn you. That's fine. That's not what's important to me. What's important to me son los pobres, right? If and that's the direction that I think these popes have and where they can go. I mean, I think that we saw this earlier. We talked about it last week. There's an energy right now. You're doing this show. There's an energy within the faith that I think is tempting to seize on. Like I just think about Bishop Barron, how big his thing
yes,
is, how big Father Mike is, how we're doing this show, how there's has the War on Beauty, this young woman on Twitter who's just talking about faith. She's a Jewish girl from LA who converted to Christianity because she went to Italy and said, "Why is everything beautiful from 500 years ago and everything new terrible?" Right? Why do we live in these boxes? Why aren't we looking up? Why aren't there spires? Why aren't things beautiful? That beauty does come from some level of belief that you're looking upwards. You're putting your spirit towards something higher than this ground that we live on that's dirty earth and cars going by and highways and all this stuff. Like, how do we get back to looking upwards to aspire into something more? So I think that there's desire for that because, I was looking at something, I was reading something and to the effect of like, from OnlyFans to freaking ordering food to swipe left to Netflix to Reels, you don't have to do anything. If you're 18 years old and you're sitting in your room, you can get food delivered, you can have sex on demand, and you can see what girls are nearby. You don't have to move. You have everything that you could ever want through history: food, women, glory, whatever. And you know what? People are still unhappy because half of them are on medication, half of them are, watching porn all day, right? What, where do you find something to lift you up? I think that's what people are searching for. They're searching
yeah,
for what you're searching for what I'm searching for, something more, right? And that's what these moments are about. Like how do we tap into that as a faith? And for me, it's just the 2,000 years of tradition. I cannot get my head around that, and I can't get my head around the idea of mystical experiences where people pray, and it's been happening for years and years and years. 500 people saw Jesus rise from the dead. It's in the Bible. I don't know. I don't know if that's true, but tomorrow is the ascension, is the ascension of Christ. We're finishing Easter, 40 days that Jesus rose. He's been on earth for 40 days, hanging out with people. People saw him and they were like, wow, it's Jesus. He's here. That's amazing. And he's going to ascend into heaven tomorrow. So this is the end of the Easter season and we go back into ordinary time. But tomorrow is that feast. We celebrate that he was here and goes back up. So you
yeah.
know that mystical, like what is that, how does that work, what does that mean? So that's what I try and think about. I try and think about the things that are outside of these walls, that are outside of your phone, that are outside of the internet, the magic part, the mystical, like what was that, what happened, how did that happen? So, and that sort of takes me into that our other story of Saint Teresa of Avila,